So I wanted to include a lesson in this course about filters inside Photoshop, because filters, like layer styles, have numerous combinations of different types of effects you can apply. There are a number of designers out there that don't really use filters that much. They may use simple ones like blur and sharpen and things like that. But then there are designers that really dig in deep and really can come up with some really creative combinations with filters. In the filter menu up here, you have a number of different categories of filters. If you've never explored these, I would certainly encourage you to go in here and play around with them. One of the biggest things I'm always preaching about filters is don't necessarily pay attention to what they are named. Rather, go in there and just apply them and see what they do to achieve different types of effects. And you can combine them to get different types of things going on in your images. You've got a number of different types of blur filters, distort filters, noise. You can add stylize. If you've used earlier versions of Photoshop, you'll notice that there are some filters that are missing. Well, they're not necessarily missing as they have been relocated. If you go up here and choose Filter Gallery, a lot of the real artistic filters are located in here. Things like artistic, brush stroke, some of the distort filters, sketch, a lot of these are located now inside of the Filter Gallery, and that's where you locate them. So again, really just kind of experiment with filters and just play around with them. Most of what I've been able to achieve with filters, I did through just a lot of experimentation, just seeing what they do and not necessarily paying attention to what they are. So just kind of give you an idea of what you can do and kind of thinking outside the box with filters. I have a graphic here, and it's just a generic abstract graphic of these varying colors and shapes going on in here. Nothing really too exciting about it. But through some experimentation, I was actually able to come up with something that you probably would never think of looking at a graphic like this. So the first thing is I'm going to go to Filter, go to Blur, and go to Gaussian Blur. Give it a very small blur, about a 2-pixel blur will be fine. And I'll go ahead and click OK. So it's kind of removed the really fine detail of this background. Then I'm going to go under Filter again, and this time go to Filter Gallery, because what I'm looking for is actually this Chrome filter, which is under the Sketch category. So I go to Sketch, and then click on Chrome. Now, if I slide the preview over here, you'll notice what this has become. Because I have the detail set at 0 and the smoothness to its maximum setting of 10, you can see that this graphic almost takes on the appearance of a fabric. It's almost like a silky fabric or satin fabric in a sense. And this I actually stumbled upon by accident. I'm thinking, oh, this is kind of cool. Where can we go with this? So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now you can see it really is taking on the appearance that it's like ruffled up fabric in a sense. So let's build on that. So I'm going to go ahead and just double click and put a new layer underneath this active layer. And let's go ahead and give this a gradient fill. I'm going to actually set the background to kind of a dark red. So I got red as my foreground, black as my background color. I'm going to go ahead and get my gradient tool, and let's go ahead and get that file. Let's apply the gradient to that background layer as a radial gradient, rather. Let's do a radial here, so that the red is more in the central area where that the folds are. Now I'm going to use a blend mode. Remember what we talked about blend modes. I'm going to change the blend mode of this layer here to overlay. And look how the appearance has changed. It went from that generic abstract graphic, and now we've got something that really looks like a satin fabric. Very, very cool through the use of filters. If we take it even further, I'm going to duplicate that layer and change the blend mode to screen. Then I'm going to bring up my levels and just grabbing the shadow slider here, the shadow eyedropper rather, I'm just going to find kind of a dark area in the image here, just kind of click right about here. And then tighten that up a little bit, and this is going to give me some enhanced shine on those edges there. So you can see the difference there. It's really bringing out the detail. If it's too much, I can even drop the opacity there quite a bit. Let's bring it down to about 75. So now I'm getting this kind of fabric, almost a liquid. You know, it looks more fabricy there, but if I take this down to about 50, and it gives me that's like it's got a shine on it. So it's actually become an interesting backdrop for, let's say, a jewelry ad or something. So if I took this necklace here and just brought it on over, let's go ahead and defringe the edges there. Let's go ahead and do that, and let's go ahead and scale it down. Now again, I'm going to go ahead and put this in a smart object like we talked about earlier. Free transform, Command 0. I'm just going to scale it down here and position it right over that layer there. And let's create a shadow. I'm going to hold command click right on the layer, make an active selection, and then command click the new layer icon. It drops a new layer underneath that active layer, and I'm just going to fill that selection with black. So let's bring up the fill window here, normal 100%. And let's just do a little bit of tiny bit of blur on that shadow, just a little bit. Let's do about a 1 pixel blur on that. And then let's just bring it down here a little bit there. Now here's a cool trick though. Oftentimes we'll just drag a shadow down, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in free transform and do warp. So if you just right click on it and just choose warp here, you can actually grab it and just kind of pull it in different places, because this is an uneven surface that this is sitting on. So it stands to reason that the shadow would be casting on an uneven plane there. So it's just maybe it's more here and less over there. A little bit more there, something like that. We'll just bring that opacity of that shadow down, and now it looks like it's sitting on top of that graphic. Let's take it even further. Remember what we talked about with layer styles? On this smart object, I'm just going to add a simple gradient overlay. Let's change it to radial, reverse it, and drag it in position. Change that blend mode, remember, to something like soft light. Gives me a little bit of a lighting effect on there. Let's see what overlay does. That's a little bit brighter. I think I like that. Maybe drop the opacity a little bit. A lot of different possibilities here. But look at this really cool backdrop we've created, or background we've created, from a simple graphic element. So if I just go ahead and make a duplicate file here and revert this one back to its original state, that's what we started with, and this is what we turned it into through the use of filters. And again, this goes back to what I was talking about, is experimenting. Go in there, and again, you might be using filters already. You might go over here, use some of the blur filter sometimes, maybe go in here and use sharpen. There are some basic filters for photographers and designers that a lot of them use. But there's a handful of them that really achieve some interesting effects with some experimentation and being able to combine them with other filters. Like we did with this one, we combined the blur and that chrome filter to create this rather interesting effect. You can come up with some really interesting combinations. I've experimented with these for years, and again, like I said, like layer styles, the combinations are endless. I'm still discovering new things just by playing around with different filter combinations. And as if you're a designer, you can certainly come up with a number of different combinations you can use for background elements, or even design elements, or atmospheric effects and such like that, just by playing around with them. So before you think about going and diving into that plugin that's going to give you that effect they promise, perhaps go in there into that filter menu and just play around with a few filters and see if you can achieve that effect on your own with a little bit of experimentation.